In other news, what began as a small fire in the laundry room of a Sahali apartment building has ended with 100 Kamloops residents being left homeless. Yesterday's blaze at Copper Ridge Court took 50 firefighters, 2 fire engines, and 2 aerial units to bring it under control. And before the fire was out, 2 feet of water had accumulated on the bottom floor of the apartment complex. Rafalina Suriani has more on the severity of the blaze.
The fire started in the laundry room on the 3rd floor of the apartment building. It didn't take long for the blaze to spread into the walls and take off.
I've never seen a fire that has been this big and has affected this many people.
Robin Harris was one of almost 100 tenants left homeless, worried about what would be left for her to return to.
I've got school stuff in there the rest of the semester, and I don't know what to do with my textbooks and my laptop, my clothes, all my things. We didn't grab anything, we just grabbed the cat and went.
As tenants looked on, firefighters worked feverishly to keep the blaze from consuming the 52-unit building.
Once it gets between the fire separations, it's a straight run almost throughout the whole building until it hits another firewall, which in this particular building, those firewalls really did aid in the containment of that fire.
It took several hours to get the fire under control. Crews worked round the clock to ensure it didn't flare up again. This morning, investigators were back at the scene to determine just how much damage had occurred. Amazingly, only 5 units were completely gutted.
There's nothing left in those rooms there, unfortunately. But the good news is all the other units within the building sustained heavy water damage, but the smoke and smoke damage is almost non-existent.
The city's fire chief says he's pleased with his team's response.
Some of the tactics that our firefighters used yesterday were very effective in keeping smoke and water out of the 2 further areas from the center core of the building, and it's beyond the firewall. So there's really no damage to those units at all.
There is no price tag yet on the extent of the damage here, but it's expected to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly even more. Rebuilding and repairing will also be lengthy, meaning that almost 100 tenants are now scrambling to find a place to live in the meantime. Rafalina Suriani, CFJC News.
And attention is now being turned to the former residents of this burned out apartment complex and what the future holds for them. While most were put up in hotels last night, emergency services will only last until Saturday. Many of the residents do not have fire insurance, which means they have lost everything, and several are students, making the job of starting over even more difficult. Tanya Cronin has more.
24 hours after fleeing their burning apartment building, residents of Copper Ridge Court were given just minutes to gather what they could.
Shoes, jacket, pet food, computer, camera.
412!
Residents were met by firefighters and escorted inside to get personal belongings and the necessities they need to live away from home for what could be several weeks.
It was my life, so I mean everything I owned was in there, it's just a big deal.
About 100 people have been displaced by yesterday's massive blaze, and while some were allowed back in today, those in the most damaged parts will have to wait.
I was on the 2nd floor, but there's so much water and stuff like that the whole main floor was flooded.
Earlier this morning, residents met at the Interior Savings Center, where they were given information on what to do next.
Our emergency support services team is here, and they've given them 72 hours of lodging, and they've also provided them with the essentials, food and clothing. After that, people have got to start looking for some homes, and our ESS team is in there helping with that too.
Jana Schwiard and her 2-year-old daughter spent the night with family, but they'll soon need to find a more permanent place to stay.
Thankfully, we got the support in town. You know, there's a lot of people that don't have a place to go, so it is tough, but I do have family in town.
But not everyone is so fortunate. Many have been left completely homeless, and community agencies are now stepping up to help with everything from donations to housing.
We're providing as vouchers so that they can go shopping at the thrift store for furniture, utensils, whatever they need, clothing. That'll all be provided for the folks.
We can work with the private landlord sector in the community to see who's got vacancies for where people can move to.
Well over 30 of the Copper Ridge Court residents attend Thompson Rivers University. Half of them are international students. The university is working with organizations on and off campus to help everyone out.
We've contacted their faculty and we'll be contacting their classmates because we know a lot of students will have lost their notes and drafts of assignments and that sort of thing. And so we want to make sure that we have everything in place to help them successfully finish the year.
The aftermath from the fire is extensive. It will take weeks or even months before the electrical system is fixed, but no exact time frame on when residents will move back home.
Donations for Copper Ridge Court residents can be dropped off at the Salvation Army Collection Center on Tronquil Road, or you can contact them at 554-1611. The TRU Foundation is also accepting donations, which will be put into an emergency bursary fund for displaced students.